The Palestinians are the ones who are dispossessed. They're the ones who are occupied. They're the ones who are invaded regularly.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. We're going to begin with notice of a very important conference, one that will be an emotional roller coaster. It's taking place in Bridgeport, Connecticut, the afternoon of Sunday, April 28th. It's called A Green New Deal and Other Ideas on Avoiding Climate Catastrophe. Admission is free. It begins at 4 p.m. The conference will not pull punches. The world's climates are on the road to falling off the edge. The United Nations tells us we must cut carbon output in half in as little as 11 years. And that's an immense undertaking. The price of failure, though, is the death of billions and an end to any kind of humane civilization. We'll start the conference as alarming as we can be, but then we're going to show the intercept video by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Molly Crabapple, which is a positive look into a possible future. It was issued just a few days ago and has had over 4 million views. Keynote for the conference is Richard Smith, who will be talking about some radical ideas on what we should be doing. By radical, I don't mean geoengineering or nuclear power, but a complete remake of jobs and production and healthcare. It's all sometimes called the Green New Deal. More about this conference at pepeace.org. The day before, on Saturday the 27th of April, Climate Rally and Green Fair hosted by 350 Connecticut. It's part of the amazing Rock to Rock event, where people ride bicycles, some up to 70 miles. Speakers at the event include youth from the Sunrise Movement, Leticia Colon de Mejias, Fatima Rojas, and Ben Martin. See 350.org for details.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thousands are taking to the streets in London today to demand radical action to combat the climate crisis. Protesters with the group Extinction Rebellion have set up encampments and roadblocks across central London and say they'll stay in the streets for at least a week. It's just the beginning of a series of global actions that'll unfold in the coming days as activists around the world raise the alarm about government inaction in the face of the growing climate catastrophe. A spokesperson with Extinction Rebellion told The Guardian, governments prioritize the short-term interests of the economic elites, so to get their attention, we have to disrupt the economy, they said. The London protests come just days after school children around the globe left school again on Friday for the weekly Strike for Climate. The movement was started last year when, at the time, 15-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg stood alone outside the Swedish parliament to demand her government do more to combat climate change. Now, kids around the globe have answered her call with their own weekly strikes. The esteemed journal Science published an open letter from scientists supporting the global youth protests last week. It reads in part, quote, as scientists and scholars who've recently initiated similar letters of support in our countries, we call for our colleagues across all disciplines and from the entire world to support these young climate protesters. We declare their concerns are justified and supported by the best available science. The current measures for protecting the climate and biosphere are deeply inadequate, Science wrote. This all comes as the push for the Green New Deal continues to build momentum in the United States. The deal, backed by Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ed Markey, seeks to transform the U.S. economy through funding renewable energy while ending U.S. carbon dioxide emissions by 2030. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted last week, "The far right loves to drum up fear and resistance to immigrants. But have you ever noticed they never talk about what's causing people to flee their homes in the first place? Perhaps that's because they'd be forced to confront one major factor fueling global migration, climate change," she wrote. We turn now to a climate activist and journalist who's been on the front lines of the fight for the planet for decades. 30 years ago, in 1989, Bill McKibben wrote The End of Nature, the first book about climate change for a general audience. He's just published a new book. It's titled Falter: Has the Human Game Begun to Play Itself Out? Bill McKibben joins us here in our New York studio. Welcome back to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us, Bill.
It's always good to be with you.
Falter: Has the human game begun to play itself out?
You know, 30 years ago when I started writing about this, it was a distant threat. We were issuing a warning. Scientists knew that as we burned coal and gas and oil, we were putting carbon in the atmosphere. They knew the molecular structure of CO2 trapped heat. We didn't know how fast and how hard it was going to pinch. The story of the last 30 years, or one of the stories of the last 30 years, is that it pinched a hell of a lot harder and faster than even we feared. The things we're seeing now, half the sea ice in the summer Arctic gone, the ocean 30% more acidic, half the coral reefs under siege. These were things we thought would happen 50, 60, 70 years from now, but the planet turned out to be very finely balanced. So that was one of the surprises of those 30 years. The other surprise was how little reaction there was in our political system, how slowly it's moved.
The strike at Stop and Shop continues strong. The poor Dutch company that owns Stop and Shop barely made a tiny $2 billion profit last year. Hardly enough to pay for the leather on the corporate jets. Seriously, though, this is a very important strike. We're talking about 31,000 workers in supermarkets, one of the last strongholds for workers with benefits and job security. So take some time to go down to the line, walk with them a bit. And if you're in a union, get the union to participate in a big way. Here we are. Is it day 2 or day 3?
Day 3.
Day 3 of the Stop and Shop strike. We're speaking to some of the workers here in West Haven. If you could give me your name.
My name is Matt Numa.
And yours?
AJ Monsky. Antonio Giuliano.
Great. So yesterday we went over some of the basics. So what's new? Are people coming into this store in West Haven?
Not as much. People are respecting us and they're not crossing the picket line. There have been people who are, but some people are telling us they're coming for the bank and the pharmacy, and that's completely fine.
And what departments do you work in?
I work in the bake shop.
Front end, outside. Front end.
And there's actually no one here, but what is the reason for that?
Outside.
Right now, yeah.
Right now? Well, we're closed. That's definitely something. But, whatever. We're on strike. Corporate's unfair. We want better benefits. We want better money. We want everything we deserve. And they don't want to give it to us. Even though they think they're giving us a fair deal.
Which they're not.
And, my family has 3 people out on the picket lines right now. So it's not that easy for us at all. Because we're all fighting. I did 12 hours out here today, and I have no shame in it.
And when you say corporate, do you ever see any of the high people, or are they all over in Holland?
Probably over in Holland,
Over
right?
in Holland, yeah.
We don't see any of Ahold.
We don't.
So when can people come and help out with picketing? And because is it every day around this time that it's all shut?
Until, we reach an agreement, we'll be out here picketing from, 8 in the morning until about 8 at night.
Yeah, even earlier, like we have people coming in at 6 o'clock in the morning. Like workers are here at 6 o'clock in the morning. My sister does 14-hour days just picketing.
All right, what else can we say that would be helpful for the public to know about this?
Until this situation's settled, do not cross our picket lines, do not shop at Stop and Shop. Give your business to someone else.
Yeah, I would say in this situation, like a lot of people are saying, I've seen interviews saying that people would still come here anyways because it's convenient for them. But at the end of the day, like ShopRite is right down the street. It's a minute. I feel like
Walmart at a halfway point
and
too.
Walmart too. I just feel like convenience is an excuse.
And Aldi's.
It's
Like,
with all the gas stations, the one on the corner right there that's open 24 hours and has most of the necessities. I live over there, I would know. And they're still coming in here saying, like, I need this. And it's like, yeah, but that's right there.
If you can get it here, you can, majority of the time, get it somewhere else.
If someone...
Thinking 5 or 6 days before we hurt. Thinking 5 or 6 days.
So, Hetty, tell me about your situation and where do you work in the store?
I am a florist manager. I've been a florist manager for 37 years, 6 days a week. I have great concern for this company. I started out with this company in 1982. It was fabulous. I had the amount of hours to perform whatever it took. Then I had 130 hours roughly, or take or leave on a regular week. Now they give me 60.
You would work 130 hours a week?
No. For my whole department.
Oh, okay.
Because I am a manager.
All right, I'm sorry.
44 of it would be my hours, and the rest were the girls. So I had plenty of help, and we still hustled and got the job done. Now, times have changed over the years. They give me 68 hours on the average, week by week. And when holidays come, I get 10 more extra hours, and they're worried about my stress level.
It was no surprise that Trump would veto the bill passed by Congress that used the War Powers Act to end the Obama-Trump Saudi war against Yemen. Trump said it was an unnecessary, dangerous attempt to weaken my constitutional authorities. What gall! A president doesn't have any authority to start a war. The Constitution gives that power to Congress. Unfortunately, presidents have started wars, claiming they were defending Americans. 40 years ago, Congress passed the War Powers Act that clearly restricted that excuse. The Yemen bill passed by the House and Senate clearly invoked the War Powers Act. Essentially, Congress was undeclaring the war against Yemen. In any lawful country, that would be it. The president wouldn't have any right to cancel it. This bloody war continues in defiance of the Constitution. A suggestion to Congress: refuse to send any money to the Defense Department until Trump ends his war against Yemen. Look at this 10-second video of an exuberant Iranian woman.
جوان میز میزنم به روی زخم بر تنم فقط به حکم بودنم که من زنم روز زن مبارک.
She's Yasim Aryani. She took off her headscarf on International Women's Day, and Iranian morality police arrested her. Amnesty International has started a campaign calling on the Iranian government to release her immediately. Things remain miserable in Venezuela with inside and outside threats. I interviewed a Venezuelan named Eva Maria about two popular but dubious videos, one by Maduro apologist Max Blumenthal, the other by a comedian with connections to the old regime, Johanna Hausmann. Here's a portion.
Good evening, family. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to talk about Venezuela, and our jumping off point is a couple of videos. One is by Max Blumenthal. His outfit, he calls it the Gray Zone. And he was down in Venezuela at a supermarket. So you saw that video?
I did see that video, yeah.
So overall, what did you think of it?
I mean, you know, the first, I will say, like, as a Venezuelan, like, seeing that, like, honestly, like, the first impression I had, I was offended by some of the way in which he would just interact with being in a different country that is going through what I think is a very difficult time.
See the full interview in our YouTube section on thestruggle.org. Palestine, an effort to get Madonna to cancel her plans to visit apartheid land and entertain. We've shown large sections of Ralph Nader's recent talk in Connecticut. In the Q&A, I asked him about Palestine and the Great March of Return.
Stanley Heller, I work for Promoting Enduring Peace. And you mentioned John Larson, and my question is, how do you reach Congress people who don't seem to be too concerned about human rights? This is March 30th. A year ago, the Gaza Palestinians embarked on a almost generally peaceful attempt to demonstrate, to walk back to their old homes, and they've been shot down from high military purchase all around Gaza. And they've lost 200 dead, so many people without limbs. And we go to people like John Larson, and we get nowhere. So what kind of advice do you have for those kind of things?
That's Stanley Heller from New Haven. He gives the Gandhi Peace Prize. Great humanitarian peace advocate. This is not a difficult problem. The Palestinians are the ones who are dispossessed. They're the ones who are occupied. They're the ones who are invaded regularly. They're the ones whose 28% of Palestine left, where the water is taken, where the land is stolen, where they have colonials that have been called by Israeli police and soldiers Jewish terrorists for killing innocent Palestinians in their own villages. That's what they called them. Is that anti-Semitic? Let's see, when you get the Jewish police in Israel calling them Jewish terrorists, is that anti-Semitic? The real anti-Semites are those who support the dispossession and the destruction of what's left of Palestine and its people. If you could only see the racist language that is used by high political officials that are part of the present government in Israel, and you say to John Larson and others, you know, you are supporting diplomatically, militarily, and economically a military juggernaut that has all these racist people who want to throw the Palestinians out of the West Bank completely and annex it and continue their illegal military embargo of Gaza. That's anti-Semitism against Arabs. We had a debate once between two Jewish Americans and two Arab Americans, very civil. It's on the website debatingtaboos.org. debatingtaboos.org. You can see it. And the question was, is anti-Semitism against Arabs now worse than anti-Semitism against Jews? They had a civil discussion, and they all recognize that both are operational. And you shouldn't ignore one at the expense of the other. And so I think members of Congress who don't disavow those vicious racist elements, you can't even repeat them, they're so vicious, and go after Ilhan Omar for simply suggesting that maybe the U.S. government is unfairly preferring the Israeli side. They go after her and threaten to take her away her committee assignments, and they're supporting language by people who are in political power over there, who are getting U.S. weapons and U.S. support and U.S. UN cover. And they're getting away with it in Congress and not being called anti-Semites against Arabs? Do you know what the ratio of innocent deaths is in the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians? It's over 400 to 1. 400 innocent Palestinians dying to every one innocent Israeli. And in terms of injuries and disease, because of embargoes, denial of medicine, denial of clean water, it's thousands to 1. Who's occupying who? Who's dispossessing who? Who's invading who? Who's using what tax dollars? U.S. tax dollars. Remember one thing, in 1996, Prime Minister, then Prime Minister as he is now, Netanyahu, gave an address to a joint session of Congress. Not many foreign prime ministers get that privilege, right? And he said one thing that got the biggest standing ovation. I think he got 32 standing ovations. Presidents don't get sometimes that many. And he said, you know, Israel, this is 1996, Israel's economically prosperous, a mature economy, and we're not going to be asking for economic aid from your country. Huge standing ovation. 2019, still giving economic aid to this economic powerhouse in the Middle East. Per capita income, $40,000 a year. The Palestinian income, less than $1,000 a year. So, John Larson, listen to me and all the other members of Congress. There are groups like Jewish Voices for Peace. There are groups like J Street who are going to start saying to you, here's the list of these bigoted, racist, destructive comments by people in political power in the present regime. Disavow them in writing, criticize them in writing, and cut off aid. Otherwise, you will be described intensively as anti-Semites against the Arab Palestinians, just as John Bolton is in the White House, just as Donald Trump cutting off humanitarian aid to the Palestinians, desperate humanitarian aid to Palestinian children, refugees, and to Michael Pompeo, the Secretary of State, who goes around the world threatening countries as if he's Secretary of Defense, a lawless diplomat if I ever saw one.
And on April 18th, a big protest at Yale over a police shooting. A Hamden, Connecticut police officer and a Yale policeman shot repeatedly at people in a parked car in New Haven. The April 18th protests went on for 6 hours and blocked streets. We just have time for a bit of coverage. More about the Yale protest in our YouTube section on thestruggle.org. That's it for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.